Welcome to the demo video for Visier's Tableau connector. To begin, you can navigate to Visier's user guide page on the Tableau connector, which is titled Use Visier Data in Tableau. On this page, you can find all the necessary information required to set up the connector and fetch data using the connector. And on the bottom of this page, you can find a section called Taco File History, and here you have a downloadable taco file, which is the connector file required. And once you have the file downloaded, you can put it in this directory. So for Mac, it will be users, and then the username, documents, my Tableau repository, connectors folder, and you can put the taco file in here. And for Windows system, it would also be in the documents folder under the same my Tableau repository and connectors. And so once you have this file downloaded and placed in here, you can launch Tableau desktop to run the connector. So we will launch the desktop. And once you have the desktop here, you can click on the left side More, and you'll see a list of connectors. And for our connector, it will be called Visier Data by Visier. So you can click on that one, and it will start launching the connector. So first of all, we have the authentication window. So here we would need to enter the user credentials. And so the vanity name is essentially your tenant's vanity name. So for our demo purposes, we have a test tenant D3M, and then the API key is essentially from that tenant. So we'll put that in here. And then it requires the OAuth credentials because we are using a form of OAuth to authenticate here. So essentially on your tenant, if your user has the OAuth 2 client registration capability, then you will be able to go to Studio settings, and there will be an OAuth 2.0 tab. And here you have a list of client registrations. So for Tableau, you may want to create a new one. So we'll create a Tableau client. And then the redirect URI doesn't actually matter too much here because it's not actually used as part of this workflow in particular. So you can enter some arbitrary URI and then create the registration. And then you would want to save your client ID and secret because those will need to be used right in the two sections here. So I already have one created, so I will just use those two. And then your username password is just your Visier user and password. And then after a successful sign-in, you will be able to enter the query builder interface. So here to start off, we have two types of queries, aggregate or list. And then after that, for aggregate or list, you can choose to do a JSON query or a build query. So first of all, a JSON query is essentially a query that follows the standard format for our Visier's query API. And so, for example, you would be able to put something like this. And this basically queries using a formula source on employee aggregate. count of employee ID, and then the time options. And then if you click preview, it will essentially query this particular JSON, and you'll get back the data. And the preview basically shows you a preview query result. It only shows you the first 10 rows, just for you to get an idea of the shape of the data you fetched. And then when you click load, it will actually load all the data that results from this query. And so that's the JSON query. And then if you switch to build query, it will be a more dynamic page where you can actually select the first select the animated object. So let's select employee. And then for the metric, we can select headcount. After you select the metric, the rest of the options will appear. So first of all, you can do a filter by. So for example, we can select US only. And then for a group by, these are the dimension group bys. So we can group by, for example, organization hierarchy, level 2. And then we can also group by gender. And then after that, you have the time options. So I guess as an example, we can choose January 31st, and then go backward 6 months from January 31st, 2023. And if we click preview, we should be able to see a preview of the query we just constructed using the build query. And so as you can see, we have the headcount, we have the date, and then we have the 2 dimensions, the organization hierarchy level 2 and the gender. And then now we can load this query. And once we load this query, we'll get into basically the Tableau desktop interface again. And here we can, there's a prompt at the bottom that says go to worksheet. So we can just click on that one. And basically this creates a new worksheet. And a worksheet is where we can create the charts. So we can, for example, drag the headcount to the rows, and then we drag the 2 dimension columns, so the organization hierarchy and the gender to columns, and then we'll have a chart of the headcount that's sorted by the different orgs and sorted by gender on the bottom. And on the right here, we can choose to switch to different kinds of charts. So for example, the text table is just a simple text table with gender on the left side, and then on the top is the different orgs. Or we can do something like packed bubbles. So then you can see like man finance is 748, and then woman HR is 411. And women marketing 435, and so on. So basically we can do a bunch of different charts depending on your needs. And then we could make another query. So the easiest way to do this is actually to duplicate the one we just made. So you can right click on the data here, duplicate, and then they will give you like a copy, and you can rename it. And in our case, we're going to make a list query next, so we can just rename it to list query. And now we want to right click and edit data source, which takes us back to this interface. So then we just click edit connection, because all the data sources belong to the same connection. And then here we already like cache the credentials, so cache the access token as well. So then we don't need to actually manually log in again. And then it already cached the query that we just made. But we're going to switch to make a new query. So we can click the list query type. And then for the JSON for this, it's essentially the same thing as with aggregate. So for example, you can have this query. This is a list query that queries on employee, and then it tries to get the columns or like properties, employee ID, and then we get the location, which we name as region, and then we get the date column, and then we have like the time options and the sort options. And so all of this is pretty much standard to our query API. So whatever JSON you put for the query API, you can put here, and it should be able to give you the same results. So if we preview this, we'll get, again, the first 10 rows of the query result. And so now let's switch to the build query. And so the build query, once again, you first specify an object, and then you can specify properties you want to query. So let's try specifying some properties. So we can select age, and then we can select employee ID. And then ethnicity, full name, gender, and then we can keep the sorting default, and then query for 3 months, backward from January 31st, 2023. And then clicking preview, we'll see the preview of all the properties that we selected. And then, same as last time, we can load the query. And then now, because on sheet 1, we already have the chart that we just made. So if we want to make a new chart, we should create a new sheet, and then go to, in this new sheet, we have, on the list query data source, we have all the properties that's queried, because for the other one, it's the first query, the aggregate query we made, so it's head count and the 2 dimensions. So then we want to switch to this source, and then we can simply, for this list query, we can just drag the properties onto the rows. And then basically the idea is that we'll be able to have all the kind of a snapshot record of all our employees for the past 3 months, from January 31st, 2023. And then we can adjust the date type if we want, from year to months. So now it shows like the months of effect. So January, age 23 for these employees, and then November, age 23 for these employees. And so we can also with the data, create our own custom metrics to be displayed in the charts. And so once you have your charts generated, you can click save to save this whole workbook. And basically this workbook will contain all the sheets that you created. So one sheet per chart. And then you can also have the option on the top here to click share workbook with others. So this is if you have a Tableau server or Tableau account, then you can use this option to share with others. For the second part of this demo, we will be taking a look at one of the workbooks that we made as an example to showcase the different kinds of charts that you can make in Tableau. And so let's open this workbook. Employee exit sample. And so as you can see in here, we have the 4 different charts. And so with 4 different data sources. So what we've done essentially is we've made one query for each data for each chart. And so the first one has like employee exit reason, and then the time. Second one is like the employee job name, and then the measures is the voluntary turnover count, and then the rest are also similar. And we can see basically these are the different sources. And then for the actual charts, they will be in different sheets on the bottom here. So for the first one, it will be employee exits by reason. And so because we used our own sample credentials to load these queries, for you would need to provide your own credentials once again. And so just for demo purposes, we'll provide our credentials. And once we're loaded in, you can see that it's fetching the query that we cached to make the chart. So it's essentially employee exit, and then the metric is exit count, and then group by the exit reason, 6 months from 2022 October 1st. And we click preview. And then, yeah, as usual, we see the first 10 rows, and then we can load it. And then sometimes, if your data doesn't exactly match the data that's we created a sample report with, then you could potentially run into some errors. So like the sum of measures here is red. So essentially it says it does not exist because it expected this column name, but we can just remove this. And then we have, so this should actually be exit count. And so if we drag exit count here instead, it's basically the measures. And then on the side here, delete the error as well. Then it will generate a chart for you properly. And so then you can see the exit by reason. So the count on the bottom, and on the side, it's the different reasons. And then of course, as usual, we can switch it around for the different chart types if we would like. And then similarly for the other charts, we can go to voluntary turnover by job name. This shows us the turnover count, and then on the sides, the different job names. And then this one, as you can see, once again, we would need to, if there's errors, we should try to refetch the data. So then we should click edit data source, and then edit connection. And then once again, we'll have to update the credentials and then fetch the data. And this one is looking for X account with organization hierarchy level 2. And now if we come back here, we see that the top column properties are not red anymore. And for the bottom, once again, it asks for measures, so we have to just remove these. And then populate them with our X account, which is basically the measures. And so for this one, we can, once again, generate the different charts. And so we should also put on the top there, put on the organization hierarchy. So then now it will show us for each month what's the different X account for the different organization parts. And so that is how you can leverage our sample workbooks to kind of get started on creating a query. And the last one, turnover by organization, is so on the bottom you have the different types of turnover counts, involuntary versus voluntary versus the total, and then on the top you have the different organizations. And that's about it for this demo. Thank you for watching.